Another example, let's look at 4x to the negative 5/6 y cubed times 5x squared y to the negative 7/3. Everything is multiplication, so since everything is multiplication, I can regroup and reorder any way I want to. Well, I want to group the 4 and the 5 together. I want to group the x's together. I want to group the y's together. So I'm going to put the 4 and the 5 together. I'm going to put the x's together. Now to multiply powers that have the same base, and notice both of these have the same base. I keep the base x and I add the exponents. The negative 5/6 plus 2. To multiply powers having the same base, and the y's, both of them have base y, I keep the base and add the exponents. 3 plus the negative 7/3. Now multiply. 4 times 5 is 20. X, and I need a common denominator. Common denominator is 6. 6 goes in 6 one time. 1 times the negative 5 is negative 5. 1 goes into 6 6 times. 6 times 2 is 12. And I'm getting a common denominator here. Common denominator is 3. 1 goes into 3 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. And I already have the common denominator there, which is negative 7/3. Now complete the addition of the fractions to get 20x to the 7/6. And negative 5 plus 12 is 7. Y to the 2/3. 9 plus the negative 7 is 2. So my answer would be 20x to the 7/6, y to the 2/3. Here we have 8x to the negative 1/3 divided by 2y to the 1/4, all raised to the negative 1/2 power. Well, I can do the 8 divided by 2 to get 4. So I'd have 4x to the negative 1/3, y to the 1/4 raised to the negative 1/2 power. Now an exponent outside the parentheses applies to all of the factors and the divisors inside the parentheses. So I have to apply the negative 1/2 to my two factors and my divisor. So doing that, I would have 4 to the negative 1/2, x to the negative 1/3 to the negative 1/2, y to the 1/4 to the negative 1/2. Now I want to keep the 4 to the 1/2. I'm just leaving 4 to the negative 1/2. I'm leaving that. But to raise a power to a power, you keep the base and multiply the exponents. Now negative times a negative is positive. 1 times 1 is 1. 3 times 2 is 6. To raise a power to a power, I keep the base, multiply the exponents. 1 times the negative 1 is negative 1. 4 times 2 is 8. So I have 4 to the negative 1/2, x to the 1/6, y to the negative 1/8. Now that would be fine, except that we never want to leave answers having negative exponents. So what I want to do is to rewrite this as x to the 1/6, y to the 1/8 over 4 to the 1/2. Now notice that 4 has a negative exponent, so I take the reciprocal to make it 4 to the positive 1/2. Y has a negative exponent, so I move it to the top, therefore taking the reciprocal. So when I have negative exponents, I have to take the reciprocal. If it's in the numerator, the reciprocal will move it to the denominator. If it's in the denominator, when I take the reciprocal, it will move it to the numerator. I'm almost through. The only thing I need to do now is to evaluate 4 to the 1/2. And 4 to the 1/2 is the same as the square root of 4, and the square root of 4 is 2. So my answer is going to be x to the 1/6, y to the 1/8 divided by 2. Now I'm going to give you some exercises. Before you attempt to do these exercises, make sure that you completely understood everything that I covered. If you are not sure about something, be sure to check with someone and get help, or else rewind the tape and listen to the explanations again. If you're having trouble with fractions, you might want to go back to the tape on fractions. If you're having trouble with exponents, you might want to review your tape on integral exponents before continuing. Write down these problems as I read them to you. Simplify. X to the negative 3/4 times x to the 7/8. In other words, one is multiplying powers that have the same base. 2, 16x to the negative 9/10 divided by 8x to the negative 1/2. 3, 8x to the negative 2 times y to the 1/2, all raised to the negative 1/3 power. The fourth one, 28 times x to the negative 463 over 467, all raised to the 0th power. Be careful with number 4, it's really a toughie. Once you have finished copying the problems, be sure to stop the tape, work the problems, and then restart the tape to check your answers. Here come the answers. The answer to the first one is x to the 1/8. The second one, 2 divided by x to the 2/5. The third one, x to the 2/3 divided by 2y to the 1/6. And the answer to the fourth one is 1. I was kidding when I told you it was hard. 4 was the easiest one you had. Obviously, anything raised to 0th power is 1. So anytime you see a base raised to 0th power, you simply put down 1 for that power. What happens if you have a lot of things to do? Whereas most of the examples you had here involved just one thing. You were raising a power to a power, or you were multiplying powers, or you were dividing powers. Well, the same strategy that I gave you earlier still works for fractional exponents. To simplify power expressions, the first thing you do is to simplify inside symbols of inclusion. The second thing you do is to apply exponents outside symbols of inclusion to factors and divisors inside the symbols. The third thing, you want to raise powers to powers. 4, you multiply and divide powers having the same base. And finally, you put the answer in good form. So if you will always follow these 5 steps, you can simplify any power expression. Again, quickly, simplify inside symbols of inclusion. Apply exponents outside symbols of inclusion to factors and divisors inside the symbols. 3, raise powers to powers. 4, multiply and divide powers having the same base. 5, put the answer in good form.